doing well, thanks. Hope you're having a good start to the new year. Hey, what went into the decision to hire Mike Yurcich and move on from Kirk Ciarrocca, and how quickly did all that play out for you and the staff?
Yeah, so I think as you saw the process, the way it played out, it obviously happened. It happened pretty fast. Um, Yurcich is the guy that I've been in contact with and communicating with for a long time. And I think at the end of the day, it was a very tough decision, obviously, but philosophically, I felt like it was the right thing for us to do to get where we want to go and play, a style on offense that I think is going to be important for us to play in a lot of different ways. Um, a lot of different ways, whether it's our team and what we're going to have to do to be successful on the field in terms of explosive plays, turnovers, and then obviously, scoring points. Those things are the three most important things you're going to do on offense. How that impacts our locker room, how that impacts recruiting, all of it. So, combination of all those things, but a very tough decision, but something that I felt like was the right thing for us to do moving forward long term.
We'll go with Parthu Paje from the Center Daily Times, and then Nubias, you're on deck. And just a reminder, folks, that we're going off the RSVP list. We are not using the raise hand function for this press conference.
Hey, Coach, hope you're doing well. Thanks for your time.
You too, Parth.
Do you feel like, to a certain degree, maybe a lack of continuity with the coaching staff, bringing in a fourth offensive coordinator in 5 years, does that ever kind of hinder the development of some of your veteran players, Sean Clifford included?
Well, I think obviously in a perfect world, you'd love to have continuity, but I could also state and show a number of examples of where that's not happening. You look in college football, that's just kind of the nature of the beast now. And don't get me wrong, we want as much continuity as we possibly can have. But there's going to be turnover in college football. I think for us, one of the things that's a little bit different is two of our situations have been for what I would deem as positive movement, guys that have gotten head coaching jobs. So there's going to be a part of that, but yeah, I think your point is a good one. You'd like to have as much continuity as you possibly can have, but I don't know if that is realistic in today's college football.
Nubias Wilborn, and then we'll go to Neil Rudell.
Coach, what did you like about Kirk's offense, and what didn't you like about Kirk's offense? Ultimately led to the decision.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the specifics about that. I'm gonna talk about obviously where we're headed and focus on the future. But I got a tremendous amount of respect for Kirk. I truly do. Obviously, a tough decision and a tough part of the business. It was a tough conversation to have. Kirk handled it extremely well, like he does everything. He's a total class act. And I wish him nothing but the best. But it more just has to do with philosophically how we want to play. And, I think the thing that I stated earlier about an emphasis on explosive plays, an emphasis on turnovers, and an emphasis on scoring points, they're the three most important things that you have to do on offense, and specifically in current college football, the way this thing is trending. There's going to be games where you're going to have to score 40 points, and 42-41 or 42-40 or whatever it may be. And those things are at a premium now, probably more than ever. So, that's really the emphasis, and those statistics and those things, making sure it aligns with how we want to play and the exciting brand of football we want to play on offense.
Neil Rudell, and then we'll go to Corey Geiger.
Hey, James. Curious how much communication with Sean Clifford and the quarterbacks about the change, and also is there a possibility that a grad transfer, a quarterback, could still come this year?
So a couple things. I guess to your second question, we're gonna be as aggressive as we have to be at every position to help our football program. And if there's something that makes sense and clearly makes us better, then we're going to look at it. That we're going to look at it, and that's a responsibility that we have to have for our entire organization and for every position. It is obviously very different. College football is very different now. With what's going on. It started with the grad transfers and now where the transfer portal has gone. So that is different. But we're going to make sure that we do our homework at every position and make sure it clearly is the right decision for our program moving forward. We've had a number of people reach out to us at every position. And we're going to do our homework to make sure it makes sense for us. When you talk about communication ahead of time, I always want our players, whenever possible, to hear, any news from us first before it's on social media or it's being reported. That is harder than it's ever been to do. So the team and the quarterbacks, they were able to find out before it was released publicly. But there was no other conversations with the quarterbacks or the team before that. I did get a number of messages from people that, there wasn't any rumors, there wasn't any speculation about this before it happened. Again, which is hard to do, in our current environment. So no, they found out the same time the rest of the team did. But they did find out before it was announced publicly and before the media knew.
Corey Geiger, and then we'll go to Ben Jones.
Hi, James. I'd like to ask you about your family and what this time has been like for you, getting to see your wife and daughters. How's your family doing? How's your daughter doing as well, having to go through a lot of these things?
Yeah, so it was obviously, really good time. I had to take 2 tests, a PCR and an antigen test the day after, our season ended. And then I had to quarantine for 5 days and then took two tests as well, antigen and PCR, and felt like, based on our daughter's doctor, that was the best way to make sure that I was going there and was safe. So by doing that, I was able to get to see them on Christmas Eve. They didn't know I was coming, so it was a pretty cool surprise to show up and be with my family. So that was great. We spent the last couple weeks with each other 24 hours a day because my family has not left the property essentially in 8 months. We have the groceries delivered and all those types of things. So it was really good for my daughters. It was also good for my wife, and it allowed her to have a break for a couple hours a day. The next step is, not a whole lot has changed, when it comes to COVID right now, and not a whole lot, has changed in our country and specifically in central Pennsylvania. So our next hurdle is, when are they going to be able to come here? Because I don't see that happening anytime soon. The other issue is, depending on where we get with the vaccine, from all the reports and all the studies and all the people we have talked to, children have not been cleared for the vaccine yet. So, that's part of it. And then the other thing you don't know is, even if you do get vaccinated, there's not a whole lot of information out there yet, is, can you still be a carrier? So right now, there's not a whole lot new in terms of, making sure that my family, and specifically my daughter, is protected from this. But we have talked about that if they do come, that I could, stay separate from them. We have a little room over the garage that maybe I would stay there separate from them while they're here and not have any contact with them. So that's the next hurdle for us, is to try to figure out how we can get back together as a family. But they're doing good. They're doing school online, and that's been good. And as much as a family, can be good when they're, they haven't played with anybody, they haven't, been able to do any of those things for a long time. So I think they're driving each other crazy. My two daughters, they love each other, but only so much. You can only take so much of your sister. You can only take so much of your mom. They were really excited to see me for the first couple of days, and by the end, they were ready for me to go back to work. But I appreciate you asking, and they're good. But the next step is how can we figure out how to get back together as a family.
Ben Jones and then Mark Brennan.
Hey James, how's it going?
Good, Ben. How are you?
No complaints. There was during the season sort of an unsubstantiated theory that when the year was over, you might take time off because you hadn't seen your family in a long time. You seemed tired and sort of just beat. Did you ever consider that? And from the other perspective, when it comes to the off season that's ahead, not knowing the timeline for a vaccination obviously sort of changes logistically what you guys might do as a program. How do you kind of plan for both contingencies?
Yeah, so right now we're kind of back at it. We did, based on the decision that the team made at the end of the season, we were able to get some time. We normally would get spring break, but with the academic model that we're using this year, I don't think that will happen. I did have a conversation with my wife. If we do end up taking some time, I have to make a decision because maybe the rest of the staff and people can get away for a weekend or for a week if we decide to do that, and I really can't. So if we go in that direction, do I work from home the week before we're going to take some time off to allow me to get through a quarantine so that I could actually go see my family, or they could come see me here or something like that. So we've talked about some different models and some different things like that. Right now, we kind of had that time, so we're kind of pushing forward and moving ahead. But yeah, as we all know, and that this was across college football, not just college football in our country. It was a challenging year from a lot of different perspectives, but I do think the time was good that I was able to get with my family. But right now, Ben, the way we kind of have this thing set, we typically have a 9-month calendar kind of out forward that we give our staff and then we give our players as much as we possibly can, and our players' parents, so people can make plans. But there's still. Right now, we're planning to have spring football, but we haven't really been told that's a go yet. We have that on the calendar, and everything else. How is recruiting going to impact that? We don't really know kind of where recruiting is going to go and when some decisions are going to be made by the NCAA and when some decisions are going to be made by the Big Ten. So it's harder to plan out when there's still questions out there. So that's the challenge, Ben. But we're as planned out as we possibly can be, and I think that we're going to have to do a good job of is being flexible. And I think that's something that we did a better job probably the second half of the season that we did early. Is how do you balance what you have to do from a health and welfare standpoint based on what the doctors are recommending. What do you have to do from a state of Pennsylvania, from a Penn State, from a Big Ten, from an NCAA perspective? And then how do you find that happy medium, which allows you to still, coach football, practice football, and do it at a high level? And I think as the season went on, we got better at that, and we're going to have to continue to be flexible, based on information as it comes.
Mark Brennan and then Dennis Dodd.
James, thanks for your time today.
You too, Mark.
Hey, can you address Jahan Dotson's decision to come back and, what that means to your receiving core, and how much are you expecting some other guys other than maybe Parker and Keandre a little bit to step up, because it seemed like there wasn't a lot of balance from that group last year?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think that's also part of when I talk about philosophically, I want to get more guys involved. I want to get more guys touches. I want to get more guys hands on the ball. I think it makes you more difficult to defend when the ball can go to a number of different people and get a bunch of people people involved in your program. So yeah, having Jahan back helps. I think, I feel like I got a really good relationship with Jahan and his mom and dad, and we had some very direct, honest, transparent conversations with just the three of us that they wanted to have, and I thought that went well. At the end of the day, I'm going to support whatever decisions these guys make. I want to make sure that they're making educated decisions and have as much of the information to be able to do that. But having Jahan back, I think is really important for us and gives us a really good building block. And there's a number of other guys. Obviously, Parker did some good things as the season went on. Keandre, but we got a bunch of other guys. Cam Sullivan-Brown, who had some injuries this year as well that limited. There's a number of guys that we're going to need to step up, and we need to have a two deep, at the receiver positions that we feel good about, and try to get as many of those guys involved as we possibly can. So we'll see how that all plays out, but I do think having Jahan back and the decision that he made, I think, was really important. I will tell you, one of the things that was kind of interesting for me, and I get why you guys did it, but I just thought it was interesting, the media, announcing a senior that was leaving. I guess you had to do it when everybody got an extra year, but it just seemed unusual to me when a fifth-year senior was leaving, and the media, not just Penn State media, nationally was covering it like, that they're going to the NFL, where in our mind, we were still approaching it very similar to what it had been in the past. And if a guy decided to come back, it was a bonus, type of deal. So, but we're excited about Jahan being back, and obviously there was a lot of question marks at that position coming into the season, and obviously with Jahan coming back and more of the production coming back, there's less question marks going into this season at that position.
Dennis Dodd and then Rob Kessner.
Hey, James. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, Dennis.
Hey, hi. This is a big picture question. There's a reason the wishbone isn't run anymore, the veer or anything like that. Will there ever be a day when, there's a magic bullet to stop the spread or RPOs or anything like that? Or is that just something we're going to have to live with in terms of, as a defensive coordinator giving up, 24, 30 points a game and having a good game?
Yep. Yeah, I think like anything, all this stuff is secular. I think you'll see some of that. There was a time period, just like you said, with the wishbone, that was the answer for everybody. Now it's the spread. I will tell you, watching some of those NFL games the other night, I thought the defenses played extremely well, and I bring that up because I do think probably more now than maybe at any time, in college football or in football in general, the similarities between the NFL and college is closer than it's ever been. The offenses and the things that are being run. So yeah, I think defensive coordinators, they're constantly having to adjust to all the wrinkles that are thrown out there. I think we also know a lot of the rules that are put in place in the NFL and in college football are for offenses. They're offensive friendly rules. Although I saw a bunch of people arguing about I guess a rule a lot of people don't like is the fumble at the 1 yard line that goes through the end zone. A lot of people don't like that rule. But I think you see a bunch of that. You see a lot more similarities in the NFL and college, and I thought that was some pretty good examples of pro football playing really good defense against spread offenses. So yeah, I think the defense is constantly trying to find ways. You look at the beginning of the season. You look at what Mississippi State did to open the season, and then people found some things that they felt like could limit them, and played a copycat formula from that point on that created some challenges. I'm just using that as an example. So yeah, I think you'll continue to see college football evolve. You'll see NFL football evolve. You'll see the defenses catch up, and then what happens is then the offense finds the new thing that they're going to do that cause challenges, and it constantly goes back and forth like that. So, but yeah, I think your point is a good one. The evolution of offensive football and what we would consider good defense has changed dramatically. So it'll be interesting to see how this thing continues to evolve.
Rob Kessner and then Audrey Snyder.
Hey, Coach. Thanks for taking the time. I have a question for you, speaking of pros, about Shaka Toney, who is obviously eligible for the draft this year. When the pros call you and they ask you and they're doing their due diligence about him, the kind of person he is and the kind of player they'd be getting if they draft him, what do you say?
Well, I think that the things that jump out at you is Shaka's quickness. He's extremely quick. I think he's going to test better than people expect. I think that's one of the things that our guys historically have tested really well in terms of the physical testing numbers at the combine or pro days. He's deceptively strong. And I think he has some position flexibility, whether it's defensive end or outside linebacker in a 3-4. But I think he's deceptively strong. I think he's got tremendous quickness, and he's got an unbelievable football IQ. He's one of those guys that you don't see very often on the defensive line, where he was making a lot of the calls and communication up front. And a lot of his playmaking didn't just come from his athleticism. It came from his football intelligence as well. So I think he's got a bright future.
Audrey Snyder, and then we'll go to Mike Gross.
Hey, James. Good afternoon.
To Audrey.
I want to go back to the offense and Yurcich. Last year, it was so much about getting the verbiage on the same page that you wanted the blend to try to make it easier. Just to be clear, will there be any blended elements with it this time around? And you mentioned philosophically what excites you about it. How much is tempo part of that? Maybe your level of excitement with it.
Yeah, I guess what I would say to you is, a few years ago, we were running the spread, we were mixing in tempo, we were doing a bunch of those things and had a lot of success. And then obviously with the decision that we made in the last hiring cycle, that was a little bit different than his background. So that's where we felt like the blend had to happen so that we could balance those two things and making sure that we were still running a similar offense that we had run in the past. So this hopefully is going to get us a little bit closer back to that, to who we want to be and what our philosophy is on offense. It aligns more with where we're at. But yeah, tempo will be a part of that as well.
Mike Gross, then Joe Giuliano.
You're muted, Mike.
Yeah, Mike, you need to take the unmute. There you
go. Sorry.
Hey, Mike. How you doing? Good, Mike. How are you?
Good. When you look at the overall churn of your roster since the season ended, guys that have transferred out, guys that are transferred in, guys that could have turned pro and decided not to, etc. Are you happy with it? Are you surprised with it? We're almost in free agency with this. Are you comfortable with the way this is planned for you?
Yeah, I don't know if I would use the word comfortable. College football is changed dramatically over the last 5 years. And the reality is, whether you like it, whether you agree with it, whether it's what you're used to or not, you have to embrace it. You have to embrace it and you have to move forward. You have to understand what the current model is. And you got to study it in detail and you got to evolve. And that's kind of where we're at. This is college football. It's not going to go back to the way it was. It's not. So this is college football. This is how it's going to look. and from what I see and from what I understand from an NCAA perspective, from a Big Ten perspective, from a legal perspective and from a lawsuit perspective, this is how it's going to be. And what we're trying to do is embrace it, trying to understand it the best we can, trying to educate our student athletes, and then also do the same thing, with the student athletes that are in the transfer portal. So I wouldn't necessarily say anybody is comfortable with it, but it is where we're at, and you need to embrace it and you need to move forward, and that's what we have done. In terms of Mike, kind of where we're at, I'm very pleased with how our players have handled it. I'm very pleased with how my staff has handled it. A lot of conversations that have happened with players and their parents in our program. Players leaving our program, whether it's going to the NFL or deciding to go into the transfer portal. And then the same thing with players that we were looking to bring in. And again, this is us embracing the new model of college football and finding a way to make the best of it and do what's right for Penn State. The only other thing I would tell you that probably I am a little uncomfortable with is the college football that I got involved with. Every decision that was made from an NCAA level and from the universities that I worked with, every decision started and ended. Maybe not ended, but started with these were educational decisions. And I just see less of that right now, and that's concerning. Every time a guy transfers, his likelihood of graduating goes down. You lose credits, through the transfer process, and I worry about that. I worry about that. You don't even see that being discussed anymore. These are football decisions being made, and that's just very different than the college football that I got involved in, and that I think most of my generation or older got involved with. It's very different, and I think that's going to be one of the challenges for the NCAA and all these conferences and all these institutions is how do we make sure that we're still doing that job, which is to make sure that these guys get a great education. And it's going to be interesting, the impact on graduation rates, APR, things like that they're going to be affected. That's something that's I'm very passionate about, and why I got into the business in the first place. And there are interesting discussions that I'm having on some of the committees that I'm having with the NCAA and with the Big Ten, and making sure that we're not losing sight of that, because I hope it's still a huge part of what we're doing.
Joe Giuliano, and then Rich Scarcella.
Hi, James. Happy New Year, belatedly.
You too, Joe.
You had mentioned that you wanted to be as aggressive as you could in the transfer portal, finding players at every position. But I wonder if the top priority would be defensive line and all the losses that you've suffered there. What is your take on available guys in the transfer portal? Are there enough to carry you on into next year?
Yeah, I think the position that we're still open, whether it's high school or whether it's a transfer, would be at defensive end. That's probably the area that and defensive back are still priority areas for us to finish this recruiting cycle up, if that's what you call it. I don't really know how to describe it, because it's not just the signing day; it's more than that. So that's probably the area that we're focused on as much as anything. But again, I think we've done a pretty good job of handling it so far. But there's still some options out there, and there will continue to be options out there. So that's probably our focus moving forward. And I think you guys have followed it closely enough. I think you guys know some of the transfers that we've already gotten. We got 2 at that position, 1 at defensive end and 1 at defensive tackle that we feel good about. But I think here's the other thing that I would say is it's not just about the people that you're bringing in. It's also about how they fit on your current team and the impact that it's going to have on your current team. It's not just about the addition. It's about the addition and how that person complements what you already have, or the impact of the decision of bringing them in, the impact of what that has as well. You got to look at all of them.
Rich Scarcella, and then we will go to Nate Bauer.
Hi, James. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, Rich. You too.
James, last year, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. Going forward, will the offense that you run next year, will it be a hybrid, a combination of what Mike brings to the table and what you have now? And secondly, what excited you about him since you've had your eye on him for a while? What do you like about his coaching style?
Yeah, so I guess to answer your first question, it's going to be back to who we were, the previous 3 or 4 years. It's going to be spread. It's going to be tempo. It's going to be an emphasis on explosive plays. And obviously we're still working through all those types of things. But philosophically, me and Mike have been talking for a long time, and we're on the same page, in what we want to do and how we want to do it. And Mike has lived in that world. I think the things that excite me is kind of the stats that I threw out. It's you better be able to protect the football, and then you better be able to create explosive plays. And those are two areas that we were not, successful at this past season. You got to protect the football and you got to create explosive plays. But obviously his yards per play, his scoring, there hasn't been too many offensive coordinators that have been able to average 40 points, in the five previous years that he's been an offensive coordinator. So it's points, it's explosive plays, it's ball security, it's yards per play, it's being multiple when it comes to tempos, it's multiple when it comes to personnel groups. We want to be able to put people in conflict and make people uncomfortable and make people defend the field. And there's a lot of different ways to be balanced. Balance is, run pass. It's the ability to run or pass in multiple situations. It's the ability to run a traditional style running game with your running back. It's to do that with the quarterback as well. But the other part of balance is getting everybody involved and getting a bunch of people touches, so that the defensive coordinator can't sit there and say, this guy, we got to, this is the guy they're trying to get the ball to. They're going to have to defend the whole field. And that is horizontally, that's vertically, and that's also the number of people involved in getting touches as well. So, it's all of those things. And I think this kind of gets us back philosophically where I think we need to be and where I want to be.
Nate Bauer and then Jerry DiPaolo.
Hey, James, how are you?
Good, Nate. How are you, man?
Good. Hey, if I could just go back to your response to Ben, is it a possibility that spring practice doesn't happen? I guess, like, what is still uncertain and what is known at this point about what you guys are going to do moving forward? Can you have any sort of winter workout approximating what you guys were doing in the past?
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying to you, Nate, is nobody has really come out and said it either way. And I guess what I'm saying is what 2020 has taught me, and I think has taught us all, is that you're going to have to be prepared for what comes, especially when you're dealing with a pandemic and, all those things. I think obviously after going through a season, it's easier to say that we can pull off a spring ball and do it the right way after already being through a season. But no one has said anything either way, Nate. But I know how this is, and I still see basketball programs opting out. I've seen that, people canceling their season. I think, a few women's basketball programs have opted out and things like that. So it's just hard to tell. It's hard to tell how the Big Ten is going to handle some of these things, how the NCAA is going to handle these things. But we're moving ahead and prepared and planning on doing it all. But this has taught me a valuable lesson that we're going to have to be prepared for whatever comes, and we're going to have to be flexible. So right now, Nate, we are planned from today moving to training camp as we normally would until someone tells us different.
Jerry DePaula, and then Mark Wogan.
Hi, James. Thanks for your time today. I was wondering how you specifically assessed your quarterback's play after the season.
Yeah, I think when you look at the metrics in terms of touchdown to interception ratio, when you talk about completion percentage, when you talk about third down, when you talk about wins and losses, the most important one, you talk about all those things. I wouldn't say that we took a step in the right direction. I wouldn't say that we had built on the year before. And that's why there was, change. We had different starters. We had different rotations. We had a lot of different things. And there's a number of reasons for that, obviously. But yeah, I think that's another big part of this is getting back to that position, playing at a high level and even taking the next step of playing really, really high level football. And I think we all know, whether it's NFL, college, or high school, that position is critical to your overall team success, and that position is critical to your offense's success specifically. And I think we feel good about the guys that we have. I think Sean obviously has done some good things since he's been here. I think he won 11 games the year before, or was a part of us winning 11 games the year before. I think Will Levis has shown us that he has the ability to be a high-level player as well, and has a very, very bright future. And then, obviously it's going to be really important for us to get a chance to get a better understanding of where Taquan is at in his development. And then obviously with Christian Veilleux joining us as well, kind of seeing where he's at. So being able to develop that third quarterback and finding out where the fourth quarterback is as well is going to be important. But we got to take the next step there. And I'm not telling you guys anything that I haven't already spoken with. With Sean. Me and Sean have had a number of conversations. Me and Will Levis have had a number of conversations, as well as their families. So I think we all understand that.
Mark Rogenrich, and then Nick Vero.
Hey, James, how are you?
Good, Mark. How are you, man?
Good, thanks. Appreciate it. Would you have been comfortable going to a bowl game ultimately? And what were the positive and negative impacts of not going?
I'm sorry, Mark, repeat your first part of your question. I want to make sure I got that.
Yeah, would you have been comfortable going to a bowl game? And then what were the positive and negative impacts on the team by not?
Yeah, so it's hard to say about, being comfortable, because I wouldn't say anything about this past season was comfortable. It's hard to put it into that category. I think the challenge is a lot of the challenges that you saw with other people. So you decide to go to a bowl game. Do you send your guys home for a couple days for Christmas or not? We saw some programs do that, and then they came back and the bowl game got canceled because they came back and had a spike with COVID cases. Or you keep your team up over the holidays. The opponent you're playing doesn't, and you make all those sacrifices, and then you get to the game and the game gets canceled, and you kept everybody up for that. That's a challenge. We were already paper thin, at some positions. Now, if you have a couple players that decide to opt out and go to the NFL, which is something that we've all been dealing with in college football, not just this year, not just because of COVID. That's been something that's been happening anyway. That was going to create some challenges as well. So I wouldn't necessarily say comfortable is the term I would use, because nothing about this year was comfortable. But if we decided to play and the team decided that and everybody was on the same page, then yeah, we would have found a way to make it work. And there was some real benefits to doing that. There was some real positives about doing that, about getting another win, which would have been important for us. To keep our bowl streak alive, would have been an important thing. Although I do feel like this year, in a lot of ways, is going to have an asterisk for a lot of people when it comes to statistics and things like that are going on. So yeah, there was arguments both way, Mark, but we just had very little wiggle room left. We just didn't have a whole lot of flexibility left to solve some of those problems that may have come up. But it was truly a discussion that we had with the players. I actually started the conversation with the seniors the week before, so that they were ready to have a conversation after the last game. I didn't want to make the decision before that because I wanted our guys focused on the task at hand. That also allowed me to have a conversation with Scott Sidwell and Sandy Barber, and make sure Sandy had spoke with Eric Barron as well, and make sure we're all on the same page. So there was no surprises there, and everybody was comfortable with it and understood it. So just tried to communicate as much as we possibly can. Same thing with our parents. Our parents had a lot of questions about it as well and what it was going to look like. So again, Mark, there wasn't anything that was comfortable about 2020. It was very different. But if we decided to play, could we have found a way to make it work? Yes, but there would have been even more challenges than we were already dealing with based on some of the scenarios that I just described.
Got time for two more. We'll go Nick Fierro, and then Donnie Collins. You'll have the last question.
Hi, Coach. I want to ask you a little bit about recruiting. I know you had mentioned before the season in one of your conferences that you were, kind of frustrated about, not being able to get kids on campus during the pandemic. And so, this has been an adjustment process, too, in that regard. What's that been like for you? And do you see an end in sight to that? I mean, it's tough to get kids up to Penn State.
Yeah, I think that's the important point, Nick, is it's different because of the type of school we are and where we're located. You have to have a very specific plan that you're coming to Penn State for that reason. It's not like a place that you pass on the way to somewhere and you stop in and get a feel for it. I also think, obviously game days are significant here. When you look at, our team and how many of the players that we have recruited, high-end, high-level players that we have recruited over the last couple of years that were at, some of our whiteout games and those types of things, or the spring game, having 75,000 people at a spring game and then being able to experience that and see that. This town, when all the students are here and you're walking around and there's a buzz in the town, all those things have an impact. But, I will say this, it also kind of was magnified with a season that we already weren't taking a big class. That had an impact on it as well because you don't offer as many guys. But I do think, if you look at what we've done so far in the 2022 class, the same problems have existed in that class. And I think we've adjusted and done what we've had to do to be able to take our circumstances and find a way to overcome them. So I do feel good about that. And this class isn't over yet. We still got another signing day coming up, and we've got a little wiggle room left. And whether that is high school kids or whether that is transfers, we'll see how that all plays out. But, again, it is a frustration. But at the end of the day, we got to find a way to get it done. And those frustrations, they are what they are. At the end of the day, we got to find a way to get it done on the football field and in recruiting and in academics and everything else.
Last question will go to Donnie Collins.
Hey, James, thanks for doing this.
Hey, Donnie.
You kind of mentioned earlier.
Donnie, what hat is that, Donnie?
It's UC Santa Barbara. Baseball hat, I don't know.
I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know what it was.
where we went on vacation last year before everything got shut down.
Nice.
But you mentioned earlier, kind of, when you're talking about the spread offense, about these changing concepts of what good defense is in relation to the increasing offensive numbers. And I'm wondering what are some of the tenets of what you think a good defense brings to the table in this day and age, and how close are you guys to getting there, or have you gotten there?
Well, I think we've done a pretty good job of that over our time. Really my time all the way back to Vanderbilt. I think we've done a pretty good job of that. I wouldn't say last year fell into that category on offense, defense, or special teams. I think at the end of the day, you have to, very similar to what we talk about on offense. We have to limit explosive plays, probably more so now than ever. You have to limit the big plays. One of the ways you do that is by tackling well. We did not tackle as well last year as we have. That has shown up in previous years, but as the season has gone on, we've gotten better. But tackling is going to be a big part of that. An area that we have to improve, that I would not say has been a strength of ours, is creating turnovers. Creating more turnovers is a huge momentum swing. It's big for your offense. It's big for your defense. It limits their time on the field. And then you have an opportunity to score on defense. So it's tackling, it's limiting explosive plays, it's creating turnovers. And then I think it also, again, in today's college football, which is something that we've been, typically pretty good about, is making people kick field goals when they do get in the red zone and not score touchdowns. Again, over the big picture, we've been able to do a pretty good job of that. I think the other thing is being able to get pressure on the quarterback. Being able to make the decision maker uncomfortable in the pocket, and that's being able to do that with a traditional 4-down rush, or whether that's bringing pressure. We've gotten as many sacks as anybody over the last 5 years. We did not have that type of production this year. And if you really look at us, a lot of our pressures on quarterbacks came from our pressures, not just a straight 4-down rush. And whether that was defensive line sacks, or whether that was linebacker pressures and sacks, or defensive back pressures and sacks, we got to get back to that. We got to get back to making the quarterback uncomfortable in the pocket. Part of that is also how the games went. If you're up by 3 touchdowns or 2 touchdowns, and your opponent feels like they got to throw the ball more to get back in the game and push the ball down the field, it creates more opportunities as well. So it's a combination of all those things, Donnie, and for the most part, we've done a really good job of those things in the past, but we got to get back to them. And I think as I thought we started out, we defended Indiana in game 1 better than we had probably defended Indiana in the previous years, except the end of the game when it mattered most. And then I think as the year went on, we started to get back to doing that again, playing good defense. So this is going to be a critical offseason for us in all 3 phases. But those things are going to be emphasized, Donnie, like they always are, and will again this spring.
Thank you very much for your time, Coach, today, and